So joining us live now, political analyst and professor at Curtin University, Joe Siracusa. Joe, good morning. Good to see you for a new working week. You know, I'm 40, you're 50. Joe Biden is 80, 82 in 2 years. And do you want to be working into your 80s, Joe?
No, I don't think so. Look, Pete, the U.S. Constitution is very clear. You can't be president until you're 35 years old. So maybe there's time for an amendment to the Constitution where you have to retire at a certain age. Look, if he were royalty, if he had ceremonial duties, that would be okay. You could put up with people till they're 96, 99. But he's commander-in-chief of the United States and leader of the free world. I mean, you got to have your marbles and you got to have your stamina.
Yeah, and he doesn't... does he have the stamina? He's still riding his bicycle there, we see in the pictures. I mean, but we've seen so many times over the past 2 years, and sure, he did well in the midterms, but a lot of what he says is nonsensical, and he needs the cue cards to be able to read his points that he wants to make in interviews. I mean, is that someone that can really go another term? I know we've spoken about this in the past, and he'll probably get beaten next time around anyway, but...
The New York Times had an article today talking to 10 doctors who deal with age. And some of them say, there are certain kinds of people who are 80, et cetera. But it's all quite clear that when you're 80, you're already into cognitive decline of some kind or another. And frankly, what did it for me was, and I know there are a lot of stories about President Biden. What did it for me was he wanted to wave to somebody who died at some meeting and that's just that's almost embarrassing, actually. We don't. And if America goes to war the next year or two, we want to make sure we go into war with the right country. And he's got, he's the man in charge of the bomb. And I think you have to have all your qualities. Now, this is very interesting too, Pete. We got a president who's 80. And his party really doesn't want him to run, aside from Nancy Pelosi, who was kind enough to bow out the other day at the age of 82.
Yeah.
And we got Donald Trump, whose party would like to see him disappear. So we have two guys in a major rematch whose senior leadership or whose parties would like to see him disappear. But, Biden has the rank and file. And former President Trump has the rank and file. So, we march forward. But the age is an important thing, particularly as anything could happen to anybody. And the idea of him finishing office at the age of 86, I remember when President Reagan was in his 70s, it was already an issue. But Americans, they're like Australians. They're very polite. They don't want to tell someone to go home because they're too old. On the other hand, when you reach a certain age, you can't play football, golf, or whatever it is. And I just think that if you're going to be the leader of the free world and be responsible for major decisions, nobody who has any cognitive problems or even showed a sign should be in charge of the atomic bomb. So I'm very serious about that.
Well, I mean, you mentioned war there in your earlier part of your answer there, Joe. So much has been made over these meetings between Xi Jinping, not just Anthony Albanese, but also more chats with Biden as well on that. Do you think the air has come out of that conversation? Are you buying the talk that President Xi might be shifting his strategy, re-Taiwan, and maybe bringing himself back into the international fold by not pursuing the aggressive agenda that he had been pursuing?
Well, I think he's going to cool it on Taiwan because sooner or later Taiwan will fall to the mainland anyway. It's inevitable, as a matter of fact. No, I think he's playing a very good game. He's back to it, and keep in mind that now that he's a sort of leader for life or whatever they call it there, he's going to outlast Albanese and President Biden. He's outlasted everybody else on the world stage. He's in for the long haul. Everybody's in for 2, 3, 4 years. And so he's got time on his side. And, the Chinese, they're very good at chess, but they're also terrific at poker. This guy plays a pretty good poker hand. He keeps a pretty good poker face. He's a good friend of Putin, but he doesn't say so publicly because, he doesn't want to go down that road. And he's able to strut on the world stage. And, of course, as you know, Pete, he's been cooped up with COVID in China. And
Yeah.
so now he gets to go to APEC and he gets to go to these other conferences, G20, and and everyone's quite happy to see him. And I noticed that the G20, I believe, or maybe it was APEC, he actually passed the guy who was in charge of, who was a representative for Taiwan, and they exchanged some pleasantries. Now, that's a lot of chutzpah as far as I'm concerned. He knows exactly what he's doing. And of course, the Taiwanese, if they're really smart, they'll do exactly what they should be doing. That is play a very cool hand.
Now, Chinese invented chess, didn't they, Joe? I'm pretty sure they did.
I believe they did.
Yeah, well, that's why they're so good at it. We'll chat to you next week.
We invented checkers and other simpler games.
Yeah, much easier. No doubt.